Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly Matches Net podcast. I'm your host, as always, Phil Brown. And my regular co-host, the excellent James Rhodes. First one of the season, I suppose, since the game this weekend against Fulham. I was gone last week, as many of you know, on a nice little holiday, which was nice vacation in San Diego. So back to work this week. How was your weekend, man?
Yeah, it was really nice. Overall, it was a good weekend. My kid went back to school last week and had the opening match on a Friday out of the way, a win. So the rest of the weekend was not dealing with worry, concern over United, which was nice. Because you forget that feeling for a bit, and it was nice not to have it, and it was nice not to have it on the opening weekend as well.
Oh, listen, I thought my kids were supposed to go back to school today. Well, it turns out it's
Mm.
tomorrow.
Oh no.
I woke up. Or I was going to get ready to go to bed last night. I said, "How many kids are going to school tomorrow? They're going to somebody's school tomorrow. I don't care where they're going. Right? If there's a school over, they're going. I'm like, don't be doing that to me." Like, so I've got one more day of it. But anyway, yes, game this weekend, mate. On Friday, of course. With lots of stuff happening in the transfer market, of course. We'll get into all that news. We'll get your reaction to the game of the weekend. What your thoughts are, of course. Very positive in the sense that Joshua Xerxes scored. A couple of players making a debut after
Mm.
fans the week before getting quite frustrated with the lack of transfer activity, which we um, have seen the week after, where a couple of deals happen within quick succession of each other, just exactly the same way the Euro and Xerxes deals happened. And I
Yep.
still think there'll be one or two others before the end of the window, as we predicted. So we'll get into that in a few other things. First of all, how I felt after the Fulham game was completely different to how I felt after the Wolves game last season.
Yes.
I, I completely accept had United not have won that game, the reaction would have been totally different. It would have been criticised for being wasteful, and Ten Hag would have been under increasing pressure. What was your take on the game of the weekend, or again on Friday against Fulham?
I was quite happy with it, and especially yes, as you compare it to last year, because when we look at last year, for me, what were we trying to solve? What were the biggest problems that we were looking at? I've said before that I don't worry so much about finishing when I'm talking about looking at a club that's attempting to progress and in performance, because that happens. Sometimes you score, sometimes you don't. Um, it was more, I think we were all looking at last year, that warning sign in the Wolves game that showed up, that ended up exacerbating throughout the season, which was teams just absolutely running through us. Now, amusingly, we played against Adama Traore, who has done that to us on a number of occasions. And I think if you have a very open midfield, or if you don't, Adama Traore is going to run through your team. Now, once he reaches the end of that run, he's not going to do anything, because he's he's absolutely horrific in that final decision he makes is terrible, but he runs through your team. And even with all of that, I thought in the first 10 minutes, United looked, I was like, uh-oh, is this happening again type of thing. Casemiro was diving out of position a bit. We were getting beat. We were getting run through. After that, I thought it was one of the best overall defensive and out of possession performances we've seen in a long time from United. They were very high up the pitch. They were pressing very high. They were winning the ball back quickly. They forced Fulham into constant mistakes, constant errors, constant wayward passes. I thought Harry Maguire probably had one of his best games ever at United in that game, stepping up into the midfield, winning every single ball to get United back into possession and keep the ball out of our half. He was immense, actually. So I was very happy. Obviously, there was an element of risk associated with playing a very aggressive way, which I'm okay with myself personally. I'm not somebody who I don't want to watch. I watched the City versus Chelsea the game. I could have gone to sleep for 60 minutes. I don't want to watch that type of football for United. I really just don't. And I like the direction that we're going and continuing to go in. That is still, to me, very dynamic, very exciting. It's not, spreadsheet football. It's not Twitter tactical football, and I still like it. So it has its concerns, but but I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a really fun game to watch, and I think that there were adjustments to how we played compared to the problems we had last year, even though the ideas were not that different.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll start on one things that slightly concern me. That I don't know if they're a bigger issue, but there was a number of times when United were breaking when they had really small numbers in the box,
Yes.
and many times that without that striker, I would see United attack, ball put across the box, and maybe it's Bruno Fernandes or Mason Mount, and they're nowhere near a striker position. They're almost at the top end of the box. The ball's coming across, it's getting cleared, and I'm like, this is maybe a concern to me.
Mm-hmm.
And Xerxes is someone that plays deeper, so he's not someone that's going to sit like a Holland as as your deepest attacking player, but these are things that are, I'm nitpicking here.
Yeah.
I do think that we'll have a big test this weekend, of course, against Brighton. But I hope that as things progress, that you need to get bigger numbers in the box. I'm still not 100% sold on Mason Mount. Not as a footballer, I just don't know what he. I'm still struggling to see what the outstanding thing he brings to the team is. That if he wasn't in, United would lack. I can see that with Bruno Fernandes. I can see that with Garnacho. I can see that with Ahmad. I can see the things that they bring. Mason Mount to me is still, he misses too many chances. People are going to maybe get upset at me for this, but missed a really good chance. Now, to the Bruno, to be fair, but I know what Bruno can do. I know, and I'm still waiting to see that with Mason Mount. And that is one position that I'm going to watch with interest because I think against better teams in Fulham, that may be a problem. But on the plus side, I thought that United played really well. They weren't open tactically. They weren't wide open in the middle that we've seen before. And it's easy to say, okay, this is Fulham, but this has been the way United have played pretty much since after that Crystal Palace game. Where tactically they've been much more compact. They've been excellent against City for the last couple of games. They played against them. You saw against Chelsea how comfortable City were. Chelsea had a couple of decent chances, and Chelsea had a decent record against City last season. But I think that there's definitely been a tactical adjustment in how United play. They're much more compact. Very, very interesting watching the patterns in the beginning of the game, how they were constantly switching across the front three from, or even from forward sometimes. And it was really difficult to know who was playing on the left, who was playing on the right, who was playing down the middle because they kept constantly changing. On another plus side, Casemiro had another fantastic game, James.
Yeah, he did. And it's interesting. I think that the adjustments certainly help because what Casemiro is not doing anymore, or not being asked to do anymore, which was certainly, again, kind of exacerbating the problems he was having last season, is he's not sat by himself, in front of the back four while the rest of the team presses, asking to cover 30 yards of space. He was actually pressing quite high at times, right? Winning the ball high, actually made some really good chances doing just that, getting up high up the pitch and winning it quickly. Kobbie Mainoo had to do a lot of work next to him to work together in that partnership. I think Kobbie Mainoo attempted like 20 tackles. It was like an insane number. But that's okay because they were more together. Like they were two pushing up high together instead of one of them up and one of them dropped way deep in this huge space. And so that helped, where one would interrupt or disrupt the play and the other one would clean it up. And that's kind of what you want out of your partnership. And it helped Casemiro quite a lot and made him quite effective. I will also add that when you watch him play, it's very understandable why United are, which we'll get to, are in pursuit of Manuel Ugarte, because the job that Casemiro was doing was pretty much exactly what Ugarte does on a daily basis, is what he's known for and how he plays out of possession. I had the same concerns with you in terms of two things, which were, one, the dynamics between the attack seem still a bit disjointed. I thought Dalot was a bit confused on the left when he was in possession. Not being left-footed, I think he struggled a bit playing with Rashford over there because they both just occupy the same space instead of it being the overlaps, and it was a little confused there because the play would always turn around instead of going forward. And when Rashford got isolated over there, he created a couple good chances, but it was a bit confused. Mazraoui did a great job on the right, playing a bit deeper. He wasn't really overlapping or getting to the box, but playing deeper, and he was exceptional in his debut. I would still consider saying swap them if we don't have a left back, because Mazraoui is much better with his left foot. Yeah, and I think it would suit both of them. I think Dalot would just perform a lot better back on the right, and I think Mazraoui will do great on either side. His technical abilities is in possession. I knew he was a good player. I was a fan of that signing, but I was really shocked at how good he was on the ball and in possession, and how ready he seems for the Premier League, which was great. But the attack did seem a bit confused. The false nine thing with Bruno and Mount works really well out of possession. But as you say, once we get on the ball, where Xerxes scored was dropping deep and then darting into the box, dropping deep, dart into the box. The things you do want from a striker where you'll get in there. Bruno doesn't really do that because he still hangs at the edge of the box. Mason Mount does the same thing, hangs at the edge of the box. I think it would look better with Xerxes and Bruno rather than Bruno and Mount as those two players. Mason Mount, yeah, he was really, and his pressing was great, but it is the fact that when you get him in possession of the ball, when United have the ball, you don't really see him doing much, and it's tough.
I mean, to me, it makes sense in that position, James, if he has an exceptional goal-scoring record.
Yeah,
if you're talking about a midfielder that's hitting consistent double figures.
Yep.
Then I'm saying, okay, that makes sense, because the goals are going to have to come from somewhere. The shortcomings are going to have to come from somewhere. If you play a false nine like that, Arsenal got away with it with Havertz because he started scoring goals.
Yep.
But before that, all the talk was Arsenal badly needed a central striker.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're lacking those goals. And I think for Mount, I really want him to work because, I've talked to people that, that watch Chelsea week in, week out, and they've raved about him. And I remember putting a tweet out, and I accept this was a little bit ignorant, but it was in one of the cup finals. Liverpool were playing Chelsea that year. They both went the penalties. Chelsea lost both of them. And I remember saying, I mean this sincerely for Chelsea fans, but what exactly does Mason Mount do exceptionally well? Because every time I've watched him, I've never seen him do anything exceptionally well. But I accept it. And that was a genuine question because I didn't watch Chelsea enough to know. And I got, I looked some of his stats previous to that about his goals and assists record. His assist records was quite good, but as a goal scorer, midfielder, I'm not sure. I want to be convinced, but I'm not there yet. And I have to be honest. There's certain players that I was never totally convinced by Palestri. United are going to sell him, which is definitely the right thing to do. There's other players that United have had where it's just I'm not quite sure what they bring that makes them a Manchester United player, and he's one of them. I hope he works. I hope it works out for him. I hope he stays fit, but I still have slight concern there. I want to ask you another thing. I might be nitpicking on here, but Scott McTominay's reaction when Xerxes scored.
You noticed that too? I actually did.
I was like,
he almost seemed disappointed. Yeah, exactly. Right. It was like very stone-faced. Like
sick.
He only came on 5 minutes ago. It was.
I was like, and then I read that United are only willing to let him go if he really wants to go, which it looks to me like a player that doesn't particularly really want to go, but is accepting, and he probably has to go. Did you read anything into his reaction when Xerxes scored?
I did a little bit, and I don't want to say that means it's true, because we read into it. Because I read the same thing into it, and I was like, this doesn't particularly look like an excited, thrilled player at what's going on
One of the
right
reasons
now.
I bring this up, James, because I want to be fair, is
Yeah.
I used to bring it up about Anthony all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whenever
Yeah.
United would score last minute winners, you'd see him almost reluctant to celebrate. And I'm like,
Right.
I want to
Why?
be fair because I
Yeah.
singled, and some people are different. Some people can have Cristiano Ronaldo type personalities, but it's not me. I don't care. But it's never been McTominay, and he
Yeah.
just looked to me like a player that wasn't quite there.
Yeah, and the situation with him is tricky, right? I think in the last time we did the podcast a couple of weeks ago, we talked about him and Wan-Bissaka and how at the time it was kind of stalled with Wan-Bissaka, and it even went through some late bumps, his transfer out, because it was a similar situation where he didn't really want to go, Wan-Bissaka, right? He had a year left. He didn't really want to leave. He wasn't like thrilled about all of it, but United pushed quite a bit on this to get it to happen and financially as well. And I think that it has to be weighing on McTominay a little bit the same situation, because leading into summer, he was going to see clarity on his position. Now, if you look at that squad, there's a world where 2 weeks from now, Scott McTominay doesn't make the bench anymore. When you think about, the players who may come back, the players who they still may sign, because if they're signing an Ugarte and Xerxes starts instead, right, and he gets fully fit and he's starting, well, Mason Mount is coming off the bench then, and he started, so we know he's ahead of McTominay in there. He's going to come off the bench first. Casemiro will be on the bench and will probably come off the bench if Ugarte's in there. There's not a lot of space. McTominay's not a winger. You're going to need Garnacho or Ahmad and then Anthony or Sancho on the wings. When Rasmus Højlund comes back, there's that. You need at least 2 center backs. You're going to have to figure out this fullback thing, and then you have a goalkeeper. There may not be space on the bench even for him in a few weeks. And even if there is, he's more likely, as soon as Xerxes starts, to be an unused substitute moving forward. And I'm sure he knows that. That's the reality of the thing. And, he was looking, his situation was looking for, would he get a new contract at United and what would his role be? Doesn't seem like they're looking to give him a new contract and, accentuate his position at United. It's kind of like they're playing that little bit of a game of, they're not trying to force him out, and he's an academy prospect and he's been there a long time and all of that. Not prospect, product, I should say, academy product, and they don't want to treat him, poorly. They're not going to do what Chelsea are doing to their academy products, because it's kind of unbelievable what they're doing with the players that they brought through. You can't do that in Manchester. You just can't. But they're obviously, he is not central to the plans of the club. And when players start coming back, and another one gets signed in the midfield, he's just not there. And he is at an age where he's getting one more serious contract, probably. He's 27 now, right? So he's got to be looking at that too.
Look, this is a realization a lot of players have to face at top clubs.
Yeah.
And it's, you have to decide, not everyone's going to be good enough to play for Manchester United every week. Scott McTominay is a very, very good player, more than capable of going and playing every week at another club, maybe just outside the top 6. Maybe, I see him playing every week for a club like West Ham or something like that.
Yeah.
But maybe for Manchester United, it's totally different. And McTominay, I really like him. But in one sense, I suppose it's good that United are a football club. Players now don't want to leave. But like we've said, this is something that confronts players all the time at clubs the size of United. There's the other part of this that I would expect Christian Eriksen will probably leave before the end of the window, because he hasn't featured at all.
Yep.
And I think that United would be happy for that. Then comes the next question. If Eriksen and McTominay leave and only Ugarte come in, are United short in midfield?
Depends, right? If you have Bruno, Kobbie Mainoo, and Ugarte starting, and you have Casemiro, Mount, and Collier off the bench, that's probably fine. If you think Collier is good enough to play, and he didn't feature either, which was, and Casemiro looked pretty tired by the end of that game, and
Well,
Collier
three
did not
person
come on.
and a bunch of other ones. Yeah, I mean, United looked
Yeah,
leggy last 15 minutes.
yeah, and that's to be expected. It was the first game of the season. They
course.
played very intense, but Casemiro did make it through the full game, right? At the end of the day, he did. I think it's enough. I think it is enough, and I'll say that I think it's enough because they're all pretty robust players. I would give you that. Manuel Ugarte, if for anybody doesn't know, I've mentioned this before. He has Bruno levels of fitness and injury history. He doesn't have any. He doesn't get hurt. He's got that. He just has that body type where he just does not get injured, and his fitness levels are always exceptional. And so I think when you have him and Bruno in your midfield, you feel if they do get him, you'd feel really comfortable that you have players you can rely on week in and week out to play. And that fills two of your positions. So I think that helps a lot. I think that United would, if they sell McTominay and Eriksen, however, would consider something like Sander Berge to come in, to make up some numbers as well, if that is still viable at that point in time. Yeah, it could be possible. But I don't think they'd be short. In my opinion, I think it'd be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they'd be okay because I think that United will take a different approach to the January transfer window than what they've done before. Because the question really is, do you have enough to get to January? So you talk about September, October, November, December. So you want 4 months. I think they'll be all right in 4 months. And there's also that balance you have to get right between, okay, who do you bring in that's willing to accept being fifth, sixth choice midfielder? Which is why the likes of Eriksen's already there, because they have been willing to accept that. But he's at a point where he's like, he needs to play, totally accept that, and probably the right thing to do if you want to let him move on. And you're probably right that Collier, could get some Europa League games, could get, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with the mass and stuff where, Collier's probably at a different point where he needs to play more. But, if he plays 5, 10, maybe 10 games between now and January, and it starts to establish himself, then that might be better for him than playing 20 games in the championship. And, I think that for him, it's, I think he'll get Europa League games. He could get League Cup games. So it's probably worth staying if he's in United's plans. But yeah, I would agree that I think Ugarte at this point is the most likely. Talks are progressing on him quite well. And I think United will get that done. There's the other a question mark of what will he do with Jadon Sancho? Do you think Sancho will be United at the end of the window?
I still think he will. And I would say that it's to a large degree a marriage of convenience that he will, because United are not going to pay someone else to have him play. What's that?
I don't see any way he gets in this United team, and I think that he doesn't believe he will ever get in this United team. I think that he could probably go out on loan before the end of the window with some type of buy option on him.
But I don't think they want to do that. That's part of the problem. Like,
I don't think they do either.
That's the challenge. Like, they don't want to be, if you sell, I'm just saying, if you do sell Jadon Sancho, you are a little bit short on the wings. I don't think he's in a team, but for example, this weekend, right? If we had started Joshua Zirkzee, now Jadon Sancho wasn't in the squad and said he had an ear infection and all that, but he's probably fine now, and he is in training. There was not a blow up or something. A lot of people did speculate that it was like the same situation as last year.
But this is the problem with Sancho, is that every little minor issue.
He's not very reliable, I know, and then it's gonna.
Well, it's just that every little minor issue now, people think it's a bigger issue.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. No, you're right about that, and that is an issue. Now he is and has talked with the club about leaving, and I think it would be the ideal scenario for him and the club, and I think he's made that clear, and I think they've accepted that, and they're in agreement that if there was a good offer, that they would have him go, and he would be happy to take that and to leave. I'm sure they're on the same page about that.
Yeah.
And it just makes sense. That's not a bad thing. Players exist in that situation when they're at clubs. It doesn't mean that they're, that there's something wrong with them staying or anything. It's just, we know the history. I think everybody feels it would be better if there was a permanent way for Jadon Sancho to move on and kind of start over somewhere else. And that's fine. And that is a factor into things and what they're going to be looking into over the next, 10, 11 days. But, my concern was when you look at it at the weekend, if Xerxes starts right now, the only forward you have off the bench is Anthony. And I don't think he's in any better position than Jadon Sancho to get into this team. Sorry, you have Garnacho as well, but he came on. What I was looking at is on the left side, once Garnacho came on, there was nobody to replace Marcus Rashford. There was nobody to give him a rest.
You can play Garnacho on the left, obviously.
But then I'm saying you only had the two wingers. You only had one winger on the bench, and the options were limited there.
No, I agree that it's a difficult one because it's similar to the situation with the midfield, that if you bring somebody else in, how do you get them to accept being fifth choice, essentially? But this is where Sancho is. Does Sancho want to accept being fifth choice? And I don't know. And if he gets a game, in October, because there's finally an opportunity, are we getting a Jadon Sancho that's desperate to stay in the team? I didn't see that in preseason. I didn't see a guy in preseason that was playing for his United future. Now, I don't know what conversations took place between him and Ten Hag, but it looks like to me there was a resolution to, okay, you can train, you're in consideration for the squad, but you're still miles off my first team. And I don't believe that he looks like a guy that expects to play. I don't know. I want to ask you something that you were mentioning about earlier. I thought it was interesting that Dalot started on the left and Mazraoui started on the right. Because one of the reasons given for saying we've got enough numbers at left back is the fact that Mazraoui can play on the left, but yet Dalot played there. And I think Dalot's a very good right back. I'm not sure he's a very good left back.
He was good out of possession. He was tenacious, but
but to me, James, these are positions where you have to have top quality.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree.
And I said before, when United got the injury to Shaw back in February, that was the moment where I said they won't qualify for Champions League. You can't afford to have players in there that can do a job. You'll get away with it against Fulham, but against top teams, that will be costly. So I want to get to Luke Shaw in a second, but with the injuries that United have, do you think they still need a left back? Because I'm at this point, James, of the belief that I'm starting to edge towards the thought that we might never see Trell Malacia in the Man United shirt again.
Correct. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, look, the view on it is if he ever returns to fitness, it's like a bonus to the plans because they're never sure that he's going to. Look, it's been 14 months. It's been 14 months. People don't have 14-month injuries in modern sports anymore. And then they're still months away. There's something, unfortunately for him, that's just wrong. And it's awful. It's like an awful thing to say, but it's like when you reach that point of being out, there's something wrong with the body, with the leg, with whatever it is, where it just isn't fixing the way that it should. And you don't, who knows why, right? There's so many things that can happen in the bodies. There's such complex, issues, but so I don't think we can think with him at all this season. And if he comes back in January or whenever, then it's a bonus. But how good will he be as well? Will he be up to the level? Probably not, I would say. I think a huge part of his quality that he brought was his, pace, tenaciousness, and agility. And how can he have that after 18 months by that time being off the pitch? That's going to be tough. I think a left back would be, it is a tricky thing here, right? Because you have the same issue. If miracles happen and Luke Shaw ends up being semi-reliable, he's going to play every game that he's available because he's that good. You're not going to probably find better right now. And so it's almost a bit challenging because you can get a lone left back. Are they going to be better than Mazraoui on the left? Probably not. Or you can say we're biting the bullet and it's time to replace Luke Shaw and we need to get a good young player in. The likes of Ait Nouri, of Kirkes, of this, Turkish kid Kadioglu, that Brighton are looking to bring in and United have looked at. If you buy one of them, you're saying Luke Shaw's done and we're replacing him. I don't think they wanted to deal with that this summer, and I'm not sure that they're prepared to deal with that this summer. I think that's a next summer problem to address. And that's, and so Mazraoui helps. Now, The problem, of course, you have now is if Mazraoui gets injured, he has in the past. I wouldn't say he's injury prone when I've looked into it. He had a heart thing with COVID and he had an eye issue that was not related to injuries that were actually two of the bigger injuries in his career. But if that happens, one injury, we don't really have any fullbacks at all. You could start to then talk about sticking De Ligt out on the right, which he's done before, but you're starting to mess with things too much by then. And so I think getting someone to make up the numbers is fine. A lone player coming in. But then I would also say, because Harry Amos, as we've kind of talked about before, and we've saw, he's not going to be a player in the first team this year. He didn't make the Community Shield. He didn't make this weekend. He's not ready physically, and he will hang around potentially in the first team, but not necessarily playing much. Maybe some sub minutes in Europa here or there, like a debut we've seen. I think they got to get somebody. I think they do. Just somebody to make up the numbers. And then I'm hoping, as to your point on Dalot and Mazraoui, that it was kind of just getting Mazraoui bed in his normal position, comfortable in the team, familiar with the Premier League, and then they'll swap next week or even in a couple of weeks that they swap, because I think Dalot's so much better than on the right than he is on the left. And it would be better for everybody, for the balance of the team, for sure.
Well, look, they're not terrible on the left, and it's a bit of a difficult situation, especially with PSR, where you really can't afford to have Luke Shaw and Terrell Malacia on the books, not playing, and then bringing another top quality left back. So and I want to clear something up, James. That I got attacked on last week over my sentiments towards Luke Shaw's injury. And I can understand why people attacked me to a certain degree, because the news had just broke about Shaw's injury, and people are disappointed and they're angry. And I thought Peter Schmeichel said something that was really uncalled for about we pay his wages and stuff. Luke Shaw's a professional footballer, and he would have went to England with United's blessing. And what is he supposed to do? Not go? They have they will be working in coordination with United about his fitness regime, about when he's capable of playing. You're asking professional footballer not to go play for his country. Most professional footballers won't do that. Secondly, Luke Shaw broke his leg away at PSV. He almost lost that leg. People are bringing up articles from a decade ago that predated that. But that was professionalism at 18. And I'm sorry, 18, 28, this is ridiculous. Luke Shaw didn't get injured because of carelessness on his part or anything to do with that. And I know in the past I've had, going back a couple of years, maybe some reactionary responses myself to injuries out of disappointment. But truthfully, I didn't like it when Phil Jones was constantly attacked. I defended Martial. I defended footballers who pick up repeated injuries. Brian Robson played for his country. After dislocating his shoulder, he put it in a sling. And this happens. I feel sorry for him, actually. I can guarantee Luke Shaw is devastated. Look, I say this as someone myself, not to make it about me, but I've had 6 left knee operations. My kidney I lost my kidney. I lost my gallbladder. I've had multiple spinal operations where I had to put rods and screws in to hold it together. When my body gets injured, it produces too much calcium. So calcium builds up inside my joints and they get really, really painful. But because I can't take anti-inflammatories, it's very difficult to treat, and it's so frustrating. You try to get in decent health, you get into the gym, you look after yourself, and then something snaps, something breaks, and it's morally deflating. I mean, I was at the doctor's this morning due to damaging tendons in my arm, and it's so frustrating. And I empathize with anyone. We're all at the mercy of our own bodies. And I empathize with anyone who goes through this, especially as these professional athletes, that it's so difficult. The point is that, however, as you age, this stuff doesn't get any better. And I don't ever expect Luke Shaw to be in a position where he's going to be available for 75% of United's season. I just think this is something that's going to get worse. But if you don't have the money right now to go out and buy a top quality left back, okay, is it better to go with what you have and wait till next summer to do that? Because I still think United would be all right in that position. I still don't think, even if they went out and sent a top quality left back, they'll win the league, right? But I still think that squad's good enough to finish top four as it is. So maybe it makes more sense just to wait till next summer to get the left back that you need.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I agree. That's it's one of those things where in hindsight, whatever happens, it's going to be easier to look at than it is in foresight, right? Because if you stay, then if you stick with it and it goes well, then great. If you don't, and there's so many permutations that can happen in this, and I think that they're going to make that decision based on how they feel, of course, about the same thing, that same discussion about Luke Shaw and whether he will be able to get back into shape and all of that.
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to pick up on, James, that I thought was quite naughty, and I really didn't know who the journalist was that did it, because I saw it on Friday late, and I just saw it being repeated quite a bit, was the half quote of Erik Ten Hag about United not being ready. And this is something that as a football club, United need to have a rebuke for, because that was deliberately edited to give an impression that he said something that he didn't actually say. By the way, Marco Silva was interviewed before the game on Friday and said exactly the same thing. Said Fulham aren't ready. We still need to bring in a couple of players. No one mentioned it. Right.
Yeah.
And Ten Hag, the other part of that quote was nobody's ready because of it, the Euros, because of this, because of this. So we were all in the same position. I just thought that is something that is disingenuous. It's not journalism. It's being deliberate. And I think that's something United really need to react to strongly and say, you can come in here and criticize this club. You can criticize this manager when it's fair. We've all done that. But you are not going to come in here and half-quote our manager to provoke a reaction online and other places that is not based on what he said. I mean, they deliberately left out the other half of the quote because it completely changed it. That would never have happened to Klopp because he would never have tolerated it. It would never have happened to Mourinho. He wouldn't have tolerated it. It would never have happened to Guardiola. He never would have tolerated it, nor Ferguson. This is where United have to say, we will not accept that. That is completely unacceptable. Also, and I made a point, there are certain clubs that get lavish praise way over the top. Even things like Jared Kwanzaa, put in a Roy Keane 99 performance. This is insanity, right? This level of bullshit, total insanity. Mainly because they fear the reaction of Liverpool fans, which I give them credit for in some degree, because they do react to that type of thing. Whereas United fans, not all of them, but a lot of them, are worse than the journalists that put it out.
Yeah, it is, and we get treated this way, I think, endlessly, right? And whether I don't know how you change that though, and part of the problem is a lot of people buy into it. Yeah, well, and that's the truth. Yeah, that is the truth. And part of the problem though is a lot of it definitely gets perpetuated by the fan base. Whether one is in or out. I mean, I saw that a lot. Not to put blame on the fans for these things, but I saw a lot of people taking that out of context on purpose as well. When the video was there, when the quotes were all there, when the interview was there, and you can see exactly what was said, and there was people clarifying it too, but
yeah, but it's too late.
I mean,
after that, you.
I know. Once it goes, it goes. Yeah.
There's only one person that has a responsibility to make sure that's put out correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the person paid to do that.
Yeah.
So all these dickheads online that jump on it, that don't care whether it's true or not, that use it as a stick to beat the manager with on the first day of the season, right? Before a ball is kicked to whatever you think of Ten Hag, I don't care. This is unacceptable. Yeah. And the person that did this, or the people that did this, I don't know Simon Stone personally. I've had a few interactions with the guy. He seems like a pretty decent guy. I've seen him in press rooms. I've never had an issue with him. So, but this is something that's a culture that's been created where United have allowed people to treat them as a bit of a laughing stock, where they have to stand up and say, absolutely not, we will not tolerate that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I would definitely agree. I would like to see United being a bit tighter on some of these things because things get out of control so easily with United, and it does affect things. I mean, that's one of the things people maybe don't realize so much, but it does affect things. It does affect the dressing room. It does affect the players. It does affect the staff. It does affect things when this stuff gets out of control. And I think as
Well,
United fans in general, though, we should also be kind of together on pushing back on these sort of things too, because I mean, there's a lot of little things, right, that go on with the club, and that you one of it's just kind of the nature of online discourse, of course, that you want to end this because people love to buy into all this drama and stuff, and they also like to, there's people who are pushing things about the players being trying to make rivalries between players and people and all of that. Players like Rashford and Garnacho and everything, and push some sort of divide. And you saw after the game, which was kind of a nice moment to see because they did capture it after the miss from Garnacho on Rashford's pass, that he came over specifically, talked to him and comforted him and gave him a hug and all that and stuff. And you see those types of things and they fly in the face of these kind of narratives that happen. But I think that if you hadn't seen that and you just see Garnacho disappointed, just to add to this point, and you just saw Garnacho disappointed and you didn't see Rashford come over, you get people pushing this, like that he was ignored and he was upset and nobody came, and you'll get that kind of shit happening with United all the time. And in a similar way, and it would be nice to see them kind of go back against it.
I just want to see a clip of Ten Hag in the dressing room, opening up a big cupboard and pulling out and going, "This is the fucking Kalashnikov. This was invented by Kalashnikov years ago." And then instead of this is Edison. He invented the light bulb, dragging the fucking
Right.
light bulb
Yeah.
out. And I would just like to point out a few, miscreants and just go, you know what? Anyone wants to misquote me again, anyone wants to talk about my accent, anyone wants to talk about how I dress or my
Yeah.
charisma or, my command of the English language or, the fact that he had to do a sit down interview after 2 games to discuss everything in his first season, and how he's constantly maligned by the media that has shown zero respect at all, ever. Right. Even before the cup final, James. He had to face question after question about his future. No one else has to do this, right?
Yep.
Jurgen Klopp wasn't asked about it every single week when he decided he was leaving.
Yep.
It's just the disrespect in United fans. I don't know. I'm okay with them being criticized, but that's provoked a little bit of defensiveness in me, where it's like, this goes way too far, and this is where United as an institution have to have a spine and say, no, this is not okay. This is disingenuous. This is not journalism. I'm going to clip you for this. If you'd have done that under Ferguson, you would have got banned from press conference for a while. And I can specifically point to YouTube clips of Ferguson going after journalists for doing exactly this, for claiming he said something that he didn't, for misrepresenting something that he didn't, okay, for the deliberate purpose, right, of starting trouble. And Ten Hag should absolutely rinse them for it. And so should United. And that Sam Lockhurst got banned last season. Okay, United need to make sure. I can't even remember what it was over. I don't know what happened, but this is where they have to grow a spine and say we will not tolerate that. And they will adjust their behavior. I mean, there's lots of journalists that won't even cover a lot of the darker aspects of particular clubs and things that their owners have done for fear of being banned.
Yep.
This is absolutely not okay to me. The other thing that I really loved about the weekend was the Leach and Martinez interview.
That's really good.
That man has me questioning things about myself that I thought were settled. Anyway, the look when he stood in front of Carragher was one of those looks where instead to my face, bitch. And absolutely brilliant. What a player. They get done by Traore early on, and it didn't happen again. I love players like that, James. I love a player that everything he says he means, because you see it on the
Yeah.
pitch about inspiring others, about how you play with intensity. And I think his loss last season was such an integral factor into what happened last season, not just in terms of his defending and how he plays out from the back, but his leadership. I think he's crucial to United, and that interview afterwards was amazing.
Yeah, and then United have needed this type of, I don't know, honesty for a while, and kind of it's nice. I guess it's nice to see players who are not so media trained in some sense. I'm not saying Lisandro Martinez isn't media trained, but he also just says what he thinks, and it defends United and backs them up. On how they feel and what they want to do. And the way that, I guess it kind of ties into the previous point as well, when you have players who aren't afraid to just say what they think, because when you do kind of give just the general answers and the PR answers and things like that, then you can't, people just make stuff up because they know that those aren't the real answers. Those aren't the real things that you're thinking. Those aren't all of that. And you don't really get a chance to defend against it. And I think when Lisandro says what he thinks, and when players do that in interviews, and it just, not only is it much more likable as a fan, but it's also a matter of like, where they stand really, and where everybody stands. And it, I don't know, there's something more, I think it defends United well in all sorts of positive ways. And when you look at stuff like, Carragher was Jamie Carragher was talking about him last year, and then obviously now with the interview and saying what he could say to his face and all of that in there, he can't really do that anymore. It actually kind of proofs United against some of the things that might get said in the media and later on narratives and things like that. And I'm not even like saying it as much of a critique of Jamie Carragher, but it's like, he's not going to be saying that Lisandro Martinez is too small and that United have done this and that, after having these discussions with him face to face about things and all the stuff that gets said, because, now it's out there. So yeah, I mean, it's refreshing.
One of the reasons why we get media trained players is exactly why what happened the previous week, where they're constantly misquoted and misrepresented. And so they end up going into interviews and prevaricating, because this is why they have people run their social medias, because people don't want to represent them honestly. Some people do, but this is what happened. And in defense of journalists, I understand that the industry's been destroyed by the pursuit of clickbait, and it's really difficult to be a journalist today, because if you report things accurately and it's not sexy, then it doesn't get you the downloads and attention. I want to ask you about Harry Maguire, because Harry Maguire is someone that's embarrassed me for all the right reasons. There was times a couple of seasons ago under Ranić and what have you, I was really unprofessional with some of the criticism and that I leveled towards him. That I mean, it did reflect how I felt about the anger and frustration, and I felt that he really should be moved on. The guy has come back after losing the captaincy and after trying to be sold. Had for me, a really good season last season. Integral to United. He was absolutely magnificent against Fulham, and a guy that he is someone that has embarrassed me with how he's performed, how he's responded, and has gone from someone where I had some resentment to where I actually really, really admire and like the guy. I think he has been.
Yep.
I think he's been fantastic.
He has, and that's, I've made a lot of arguments in his favor, because I think that you need someone who, you need those types of players, and they don't actually grow on trees. The players who will fight constantly, the players who, when they get put on the bench, when they get put out of position, when they get put off of their starting role, they just keep working and keep playing and keep earning it back and just aim to be better and better. Harry Maguire is an incredible personality in the dressing room. You've seen it over summer and things like that with the younger players. He has all the capabilities of players that you want in the dressing room, and I think that he is happy to be that guy and to work at that way and to fill those shoes at United. And I think to some degree there's less pressure on him, and it's suiting him, than there was before, because you don't need him to be the leader of the whole team as the captain, as all of this. I think it's helped him quite a bit. He's got his limitations as a player, and he's not always perfect. But it's such a huge thing to have players like that. You can't just dump, like we've seen with Chelsea, just dump all your senior players. I think we talked about this at the start of summer and say we're going to dump all our older players who are actually good personalities, who are leaders in the dressing room, who are, positive influences, and then just sign a bunch of young talents and it all works out. You need players like that. And this is why the leadership you showed in that game, first of the season, to help really drive United forward, well, that's something valuable and will be there and will be necessary no matter what else they do in the market, whether he's playing a lot or not. And Matthijs de Ligt is going to take time to adjust to the Premier League. He didn't get a ton of minutes. He got a bit. He's a good player. He's going to have to adjust because he's going to be over aggressive. It's in his nature. He's going to get rammed by, which he did a couple of times in his cameo. I'm not saying he was bad or that was an issue, but he did. He stepped out too far and got rammed by a few times. And he's going to have to adjust. And having players with experience like Maguire in this type of role are going to be helpful for people like him to properly fit into the team. And I like it.
When I was reading de Ligt's statement after he signed, one of the things that I took from that was, because he was emphasizing how important Erik ten Hag was in his emergence when he first came out, when he first played for Ajax. It felt like a guy that had recognized the last move or two hadn't worked out for him, and he had a point to prove. And he felt like playing for Erik ten Hag was going to be, he was going to put his career back on track. He was the right guy for him. Ten Hag knew what it took to get him to that level, and I felt like this is a guy with a point to prove. He's 25, and Stam was 26 when he came to United. Stam wasn't lightning quick either, but he's big, strong presence. And I think if you look at the style of foot, he's physical. He goes to ground. He's strong. He's got good technique coming up from the back. That's exactly the type of defender that you need in English football. The fact that he's willing to have that physicality. He's played with Martinez. I think that I'm quite encouraged by that. And it's, with Euro, it to me shows contingency thinking that even if they let Lindelof go, they'd be perfectly fine. I don't know the extent of Lindelof's injury, but it's obviously derailed a move or delayed it. I don't know. It's someone that could still lead. So let's take a quick look at the Brighton game, and then before we do that, talk about possibly two new signings. It was interesting that Ivan Toney was left out at the weekend. I don't think United will move for a central striker.
No, and I think they just while we're recording this, he's going to Saudi. I think it's been. I was just looking or something from Sky. It looks like he's going to Saudi. That's pretty well.
That's interesting.
Confirmed or on its way. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think United would move for another central striker. I think they're more than fine up there. But midfield, I still think Ugarte will be the one that United will sign. But if there's a second one, you think it is a left back?
Yeah, if there's two players, I think it's a left back. Now, you could see it maybe as a left center back who plays left back, but I think it'd be a left back and potentially on loan or something like that. Now, for the reasons we discussed prior and everything there, but Ugarte seems very solidly. While we're on this as well, Sander Berge is heading to Fulham, which takes a move for McTominay off the table for Fulham. Yeah, that's just happening in the last 20 minutes. So I was checking, and there've been consideration.
Well, Silva's sitting two or three new players, so who knows? But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it says Laurie Whitwell wrote that they're moving off of McTominay, so I think that in this sense they're moving away. So Napoli are still. I think he has had his own concerns about Fulham specifically, as I understand it, and has been concerned about not taking a huge step down in terms of clubs. Napoli are very interested in him if they can sell Osimhen, who was also, I think, left out of the squad at the weekend. And So I think that that's a potential landing spot for him if they sell him to Chelsea or to PSG. And I think that would affect what United would do potentially at left back and as well. There's, they can probably get an Ugarte deal done without sales right now if it's at the value that they want it at. But if they are able to sell McTominay, then potentially, maybe that changes the nature or profile of what they do at that left back position. But I do think that would be easily, if there's two signings, it's got to be there because it's still the position of the most need and focus. So midfielder and left back, they're working on Ugarte. We'll just have to see on left back. I don't, there's been a lot of names mentioned that just are, I mean, as you kind of expected, lone left backs is a bit underwhelming, but I have to say, I don't think that Marcus Alonso should be someone under consideration for Manchester United at this point in time.
I don't either. I don't want to see Marcus Alonso.
No.
Manchester United. Okay, Brighton this weekend. I know United won there towards the end of last season. They weren't great that day, but they won anyway. It was a game where De Zerbi and what have you was already started to be checked out. This will be a different game. Brighton had I think they won 3-0 at the weekend, didn't it? This is going to be a difficult game for United. Always difficult. If United go there, perform well, and get a win, it's going to be enormous in terms of the belief that it will spread throughout the squad. You look at the difficulties Ten Hag's had against Brighton. 2 seasons ago, we all know how that turned out. Last season at home, it was the game, I think it was where Højlund scored, it was disallowed. So I think, of course, some scrappy games in the cup, what have you. This is a big, big test for United. And I think, what's your expectation in this game?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough one. I think, though, that if we maintain kind of the solidity that we just played and we've had, that we'll get it done. I think we'll get it over the line in that case. Yeah, I think United will win this one. I do. Brighton are good, but I think United are better. And I think that with a little more fitness and the signings and things that we've got in, I think we're just going to be really tough to play against. I think it'll be a tough game, but I do think United have it, and I'm quite encouraged. Now, that being said, United have failed to win their 2 opening games in like 5 years or something like that. They've just not managed to win the first 2. So it would be really a positive swing to see us actually, kind of follow through and start off a season with some real positivity, I guess, because it's been a long time.
I would say that the reasons why United have lost to Brighton before are not present in this United team. I think that United have lost there before because they've been tactically all over the place, because they've been in a bit of chaos. There's been, I remember them losing heavily there towards the end of the season. It's a fixture. It always seems to fall at a bad time for United. It's either at the start of the season or right at the very end of the season. And at the start of the season, they're always in that position where they're building the squad. And at the end of the season, it's usually when their season's over and they're not competitive. But this is to me a big, big test for them. If they can go there and win and keep a clean sheet, win, I think that it is another further indication of the progress that United are making tactically. And look, we know about United's away record. It wasn't great last season. They need to get goals from other positions. They need to start being a bit more clinical in front of the goal. And so when we talk about the tactical progress, it's great to see that they're much more compact. I think that's going to help them a lot. And I think that if they can, start being a bit more clinical in front of the goal. I mean, the game at the weekend should have been, or Friday should have been 3-4-0 easily. Exactly. They should have buried City, in my opinion, the Community Shield. So to me,
should have been 3 or 4-0 that game too.
Mark Rashford hit the post, and I had a decent chance he put wide, which to me just looks like a player that doesn't have confidence yet. That will come. I was quite impressed with Ahmad for significant periods of the game at the weekend. I think that he's such an important player now for United. add something completely different. So yeah, look, I go into that game more confident than at any other time I've been going away to Brighton. I think the goal for Xerxes will help him a lot. It's not the fourth goal in a 5-0 win. It's a 1-0 win at home on your debut in the last couple of minutes will give him enormous confidence. So would you expect the same team to start, or do you? I wonder if he will. I think he might start the same team, but I think Xerxes will get longer.
Yeah, well, that's the question, isn't it? I think. Yeah, it's a little hard to give a player longer unless you're making a halftime sub. In that case, I would expect the two things that I would be wondering about is does Xerxes start and do you swap those fullbacks? Otherwise, I would also not be totally surprised to see Garnacho start on the right. I'm not saying that Ahmad deserves to be dropped or something like that, but Garnacho was the nailed on starter at the end of the season and just had a short preseason is the main reason he wasn't starting at the
because
start of this year.
60th minute, so I thought he was the later sub. Yeah. So it's hard you don't really bring sub on before 60th minute. So
So maybe Xerxes starts and comes off at 60 for Mason Mount instead. That might be the way to go. So I think those are the questions. Xerxes, Garnacho. If it was me, I'd probably run the same team with start Xerxes. Otherwise, the same team, but swap the fullbacks and keep it at that. I don't think Maguire will lose his place after that game. DeLitt only got about 10 minutes as well. So I think maybe he will get a longer run, 30 minutes for Lissandro or for Maguire in the next game. And that'll help, or even could come on for someone like Mazraoui at fullback, in the latter stages to push the three center backs in there. So, let's see. But I think it'll be a similar team. Not too many changes. Ten Hag doesn't tend to change much when he's got a good performance, which is understandable.
So we will see what happens. All right, folks, we'll be back next week. Thanks to all of you for downloading the podcast, for tuning in as usual. And we appreciate everything. Apologies about last week, but we're back on track. First one of the season. So thanks to all of you for all the support. And if there's anything else happens in between times, my colleague will be first to let you know. So take it easy, mate. Cheers, James.
See you later. Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.